Good evening, everyone. It is 6:04 p.m. and this is the Town of New Canaan Town Council public hearing section of our meetings tonight. This is a public hearing that's been noticed, and I'm going to read the agenda for the meeting. This is a public hearing in response to an official petition and call for a public meeting. Members of the public are invited to speak to the town council on the proposed cell tower on town-owned property to be constructed by Homeland Towers and Verizon Wireless at 769 Ponus Ridge Road, map 26, block 12, lot 167. And as a just a follow-up, the petition that we received was received through the town clerk's office. Claudia Weber got it to the council, and the petition reads, we, the undersigned electors of the town of New Canaan, acting pursuant to section C4-7 of the New Canaan Town Charter, hereby petition for a public meeting of the town council within 21 days of the receipt of the petition for the purposes of hearing our comments and concerns and demands for remedies on the following. Number one, the failure of planning and zoning to follow town ordinance C4-10 when suspended zoning ordinance 7.8E at the October 24th, 2022 public hearing that voted to authorize positive 824 report to the council for the proposed West School Tower. Item number two, wrongful suspension and exclusion of zoning ordinance 7.8E by the Planning and Zoning Commission when it concluded at the October 24th, 2022 public hearing and voted to authorize the positive 824 report to the council on the proposed West School cell tower. So, and we received a signed petition by folks who wanted to have a hearing tonight. We scheduled it from 6 to 7. Obviously, you know, we'll try to be as tight to that as possible, but obviously we'll listen to everybody's comments tonight. We have a sign-in sheet. If anybody hasn't signed in so far, we have 14 speakers. If anybody else wants to join, just come on up and get your name on here and we'll add you to the list. And we are here to listen. And that's what we're going to do tonight. We want to hear from you, and we want to hear from everybody that has time tonight to speak, and we'll be all ears. So we appreciate you asking us to come. And it's nice to see the process work. I've been on the council for 16 years now, and I don't remember ever having a petition where the public asked to be heard, which is great. I mean, we love participation. We constantly advertise our meetings and say, hey, come on out and weigh in. And, you know, we look at empty rooms a lot. So it's great to have everybody here. So with that, Penny, I think we need to call roll first, don't we?
Yep.
So let's call roll.
Right here.
All right, let's do it.
Robin Bates Mason. Here. Rita Patino.
Here.
Tom Butterworth.
Here.
Mark Jimsky.
Here.
Carl.
Here.
Luke Hoffman.
Here.
Okay, he's zooming. Mike Morrow.
He said 6:15. He'd be here.
Maria Norton.
Here.
Norton.
Here.
Zoom. Hillary Ormond.
Here.
Christina Ross. I see you up there. Okay, and Penny Young. We're all here.
All right, great.
Except for Mike, pardon me.
Yeah, Mike is on his way. Thank you for all coming and participating. It's great. 100% attendance. All right. So
Steve.
Yep.
Can I just make a quick statement?
absolutely.
I'm thrilled that everybody's here. I'm totally sold on this meeting. I love getting the comment, the input. It's fabulous. I think we've long intended to get this second layer of input from people concerned about this cell tower. I do want to raise a technicality though, however. The petition is invalid. You don't need it because we're here.
Yeah.
We're all going to have a good time. But it's invalid because it cites a procedure that's meant to challenge an action of the legislative body, town council. This was not an action of the legislative body. It was an action of planning and zoning. Number two, we're not in a position where we're in appellate court to decide on whether actions of the Planning and Zoning Commission were appropriate or not. So I just want to get that on the record. We're happy to listen to all your input. That's the last thing I want to say, but we can't set precedent and invite people to use the rules in ways they're not intended to be used. So bring it on. Love hearing what you have to say.
Thanks, Tom. And when you all know from our past meetings on the cell tower that we had our first hearing to sort of listen to the need side of it, and we heard from some of the emergency services, and we heard some of the neighbors, and we're in the listening mode right now, and we promised to have an entirely separate night. I mean, a whole night devoted just to the health side of it, and we're working on getting some of those reports out. I know the first selectman's working on some studies to get to us and to be able to talk about in public. So happy to, we're setting aside again a whole night for that, but we're going to open up the floor and let you folks, say what's on your mind. And Joe, are you?
Listen only, vote only.
Yes.
Discussion. First gentleman who speaks says the meeting is invalid.
Well, I don't know that's not really the right.
The petition was invalid. The meeting is welcome. I love having the meeting.
Yeah, for the record, we object.
Great.
Yeah, I think what Tom wants to say is that we are welcoming, we're just like you, we're volunteers. We're doing this, we're volunteering our time to do this. And we always try to make the right decision, and we could easily be sitting out there as you guys are, we're no different than you are, and we're in a room together, and we're going to try to get through this together. And that's where we are. So anyway, let's call the first speaker up. Number one, it's Barbara Wills. If you could just state your name, your address, and we are now in listening mode. Welcome, Barbara.
Okay, well, I brought props. Oh, table. Oh, sorry.
You always have good props, Barbara.
It's part of my shtick. I have knitting and I have props. So. Who's next up?
Oh yeah, next up is
Is
next
it
up.
either, Mike, by the way? Is it the middle one does?
Make sure that one. And Steve
All right.
Steve Schmitz is up next. Where are you, Steve?
All right. So my props today are my son, Mason Wills, who is in the back hiding from everyone. And he just finished nuclear training and is now serving. He's going to be serving on the USS Hyman G. Rickover as a machinist mate in the nuclear
Congrats. Wow.
propulsion. And then our other son, Eric, is at the Air Force Academy. So these are my props. I am doing my patriotic duty to get involved in the democratic process. I live here. I need to participate. And so here I am. Okay. So on October 24th, the Planning and Zoning Commission was wrongly told by the town attorney that according to this memo, that it had no jurisdiction to require a special permit for the lease of town land to host a cell tower. Planning and zoning proceeded to waive and suspend the New Canaan zoning regulation for a special permit and voted to send a positive 824 report to the town council. This action was wrong and violated regulations and ordinances. Mr. Bloom asserted that the inclusion of the term and/or tower in the special permit regulation was an error and violated the exclusive jurisdiction of the Connecticut Siting Council. An email written by Mr. Joseph Palo to the Executive Director Bachman of the Connecticut Siting Council asks, can you please tell me if CSC jurisdiction in any way regulates the decision process and the Connecticut General Statute 824 report process of a town government that is considering whether to offer to lease town land to host a cell tower? She responded the next day. The Siting Council does not regulate the municipal decision process to lease land owned by the municipality for the purposes of siting a cell tower. She's an attorney and the executive director of the Siting Council, and she chose to use the words lease and tower, proving that Mr. Bloom's memo is incorrect. Why is a special permit so important? That's a pretty important question. A special permit provides important requirements to protect the safety and welfare of residents, including the use shall not hinder or discourage the appropriate development and use of adjacent land and buildings or impair the value thereof. height restrictions on cell towers on town land, specific wetland protections, requirements on the size of the safety fall zone, regulations concerning nearby septic and freshwater pipes, balloon tests must be publicly announced, notices must be given to abutting property owners, site plan requirements, and more. We, the citizens of the town, are entitled to the protections afforded by the special permit process. The petitioners call on the town council to rescind the positive 824 report approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on October 24th of 2022. The commission wrongly waived and suspended special permit regulation 7.8E. This project should have to apply for a special permit, as stated in the zoning regulations of the town of New Canaan.
Thanks, Barbara. After Steve, we have Joe Paulo.
Good evening, residents. And members of the town council, also residents, I hope.
Have to be Steve.
Have to be.
Yes, okay, good.
We pay taxes too.
Anyway, thank you. I think this is important to all of us, and I appreciate your guys' acknowledgement that it is, right? How did we get to this point? Well, before Mr. Bloom wrote his memo declaring the special permit was not required, he and Chairman Goodwin of the Planning and Zoning Commission were in total agreement that a special permit was required. On September 22nd, Mr. Goodwin emailed the town planner and said, I spoke to Ira Bloom. We agree on my interpretation. A special permit would be required for planning and zoning. So on September 22nd, Mr. Goodwin and the town planner agreed. Town planner agreed on September 22nd also emailed to the land use departments that Ray Vergotti from Homeland Towers would like to meet to discuss the proposed locations for the telecom tower at West School. Per the zoning regulations, a special permit is required. So on that event also, the town planner agreed and emailed that a permit was required, special permit was required. And as was noted before, special permit 7.8E or zoning regulation 7.8E, antenna permitted by special permit, any new antenna tower located on the property owned, leased, or otherwise controlled by the town of New Canaan. On August 31st, excuse me, of last year, of 21, in a legal advisory to the town of New Canaan, Bertram and Moses advised that board and commission should not discuss pending applications except at public hearings because ex parte communications can be viewed suspiciously. That's not my words. That's the words. Actually, I think the briefing was given by Mr. Bloom. So the town's own advice to itself was that ex parte communications should be avoided because they appear suspicious. And that was the advice given to the town by essentially itself. But FOIA requests shows some emails that the dates, when you line them up, look like they might be ex parte communications that could be suspicious. And again, that's not my choice of words. That's the words of the lawyers. On September 26, Mr. Bloom returned a call to Mr. Moynihan to discuss the cell tower issue. Kevin, I know you called today. I plan on calling you at some point and we can discuss the cell tower issue. Thanks. Mr. Bloom wrote back to the first selectman, I spoke with Ken Baldwin yesterday. He's the attorney at Robinson and Cole, Verizon's attorney. I spoke with Ken Baldwin yesterday, and I have some new practical thoughts on a way to keep this moving. That was September 28th. Mr. Moynihan then asked Mr. Bloom to advise on the process town bodies would use to develop the 824 report. So this is essentially ex parte communications and a plan to work around the 824 and the special permit. Before Mr. Bloom wrote the memo declaring a special permit was not required. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed my pages. Excuse me. On October 14th, Mr. Bloom then wrote the memo saying that Planning and Zoning Commission did not have jurisdiction and that a special permit was not required. That was on the 14th. He contradicted his own agreement with Mr. Goodwin. In fact, I believe he helped write the clause in the regulations in 2018. So Mr. Bloom is contradicting himself and Mr. Goodwin. So that was October 14th. Well, between October 15th and October 24th, Mr. Bloom's memo just sat in the hands of the first selectman. It did not get advanced anywhere. So that memo was then dropped on the public right before the meeting, the planning and zoning meeting, in which the Planning and Zoning Commission was kind of railroaded into a faulty decision. So the self-defined suspicious communications and this lack of transparency really ensured, I think, that the Planning and Zoning Commission and the town residents did not see this coming, could not really take, appropriate steps to try to defend our own rights. And that's exactly how we got to this point. So I would ask the town again, and I don't know about jurisdictions and planning and zoning commissions or whatnot, but that 824 should be rescinded and the special permit should be required. That was a faulty decision made under faulty pretenses. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. All right, after Joe, Vanessa Lowry. How you doing, Joe?
Good evening, members of the Town Council. Joe Paulo from Arrowhead Trail. When Planning and Zoning Commission received guidance from the town attorney not to believe that it had jurisdiction, and we've already shown that the Siting Council says you do have jurisdiction, they proceeded to go ahead in the meeting where they ignored, suspended, or waived the special permit regulations. That was given no consideration whatsoever. We were very lucky, and you'll see in your document, that Mr. Gelderman actually provided some information that helped us, because we learned that planning and zoning actually violated 3 regulations. According to Mr. Gelderman, speaking at planning and zoning on December 13th on a totally unrelated matter, in your book, you will see in section 4, ZBA is supposed to be the only body that can waive regulations. Short answer, if somebody wants a waiver of zoning regulations, it should go to ZBA. They're the only body empowered to do that. So if P&Z waived the regulation, then they're in violation of Connecticut General Statute 124, as per Mr. Gilderman's comments. I've contended for some time, and I've sent you some information, that Town Ordinance C4-10, which also appears as Article 1, Section 8 in the rules of the Town Council, lists a long process if the town council wants to suspend a regulation. You have to post meetings, notices, actually called warnings in one of the notices. You have to actually have a meeting, you actually have to have a vote. None of this was done. So if we take the look that P&Z suspended the regulation, then they were in violation of the town council's Section 8. Mr. Gelderman also on the 13th of December said that it was not legal, this is his words, not mine, not legal if P&Z tries to waive a regulation on its own authority because it does not have the authority. And you can go and watch that meeting. It's a very nice picture of him sitting between some Christmas ornaments when he makes this presentation. So you have 3 regulations here where we can show that from a purely process standpoint, we've already discussed the substance of this violation of 824, where they did not consider the position of the Siting Council. There's now really substantial reasons why you should rescind this and not let it stand. Connecticut General Statute 124 8-12 actually provides procedures when regulations are violated and empowers a legislative body such as yourself to take actions. Why is it important, not just for the town of New Canaan, but for the entire state of Connecticut? Because there's such a thing as setting precedent, setting custom. And if this was allowed to stand, you can believe that every cell tower developer is going to be running to the next town saying, let me tell you how we manage the special permits. So there's a real issue here in trying to extend the power of the Siting Council beyond where the state legislature has provided. And I think Attorney Bachman was very clear that they don't see themselves as having the ability to regulate a lease. Now, you might ask the question, and I've researched this, how does it work if we put something in our lease that the Siting Council doesn't want? If we put in a 100-foot tower and the Siting Council wants a 200-foot tower, that's pretty simple. We actually found the answer to that looking at the contract between Homeland Towers and 1837. And it says if Homeland Towers doesn't like anything that comes back from the Siting Council, they can just simply cancel the contract. So both parties ultimately have to agree. If we put things in that the Siting Council doesn't like, they can override it. They have the authority to do that. If they put in things we don't like, we can just cancel the lease. So that's really how the process works. And it was never intended to allow us not to put into the lease those things that the town wants. And what the town has said it wants is those things required by a special permit. When the P and Z basically threw away the special permit requirements, they created an advantage for Homeland Towers, and they created a lack of due process for the citizens of the town who really are entitled to those protections. We don't have those protections, which the special permit is supposed to provide, and we want them back. And that's why we want you to rescind this illegal 824 report. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Tell me next slide.
Okay.
Yeah, do you want me to advance the slides though?
Yes, please, section 5.
And after Vanessa,
So Lowry.
we have a beautiful signature, but I can't read it. 104 Woods End Road. You're up next. Elliot, there you go. Thank you. Love beautiful signature.
Palmer's method for you, right?
Hi, Vanessa. How are you?
Hi, Vanessa Lowry, Arrowhead Trail. I'm also a West School parent. So what I want to talk about is the plan of conservation and development and also show some maps. Many of us were at that October 6-hour meeting. And we know P and Z relied exclusively on the plan of conservation and development as the standard for their 824 review. Now, if you look at some of these maps, which you're going to see, you'll see that the proposed lease is inconsistent with the POCD. So, next slide. On page 6 of the plan of conservation development, you'll see in blue, we have West School, and it's marked as for community facility. There are other designations on this map, red for commercial. There's also gray for utility, but on this map on page 6, it is clearly marked as for a community facility use. And this is just one example of why P and Z's 824 report is not consistent with the POCD and should be rescinded. Next slide, on page 19 of the POCD, we see in light blue this time that the entire West School property is marked for public education. I've mentioned this before, but I think this is particularly important as we heard from the BOE just last month, that new data is showing that our school system, particularly the elementary school, it projects a rise in the elementary school population. So there's a possibility that we're going to need to expand our elementary schools, and raises the question, where are we going to do that? Do we really want to be giving up our valuable land to a commercial interest, which again is not even consistent with the POCD. On the next slide, page 55, we see that it again is marked for a community facilities. There's no designation, for commercial use. And then next slide, we see here again, marked for education use, not for a cell tower. And the last map I just want to point out is on page 93. So these are just in summary, we have 5 different maps that are showing that West School should be used for community facilities, for institutional usage, or for educational usage. And again, this is not consistent with what planning and zoning recommended in their 824 report in October. The last thing I just want to speak to is, as part of the POCD, as part of their implementation plan, there's various sections that show who's to take the lead on different initiatives. And under the section on wireless communications, it's very clearly marked that the leader for enhancing wireless coverage in New Canaan is to be the Utility Commission. And obviously, the town has been speaking a lot about this. I think it's imperative, and I call on the town council, not only tonight, obviously, to rescind the 824 report, but also to move forward with the Utility Commission. It's something we need as a town. It's something residents need to ensure that we have transparent information. No one benefits from having a one-man Utility Commission, and this is consistent with what is in our POs. Having a Utility Commission is consistent with what our POCD calls for. So in conclusion, the proposed lease by Homeland Towers is not consistent with the P O C D, and the 824 report should be rescinded. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. All right, Elliot's up next, and then after Elliot is Janae Hunter. Oh, yeah. Thank you. How you doing, Elliot?
Good. Thank you, Town Council, for and your members for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name's Elliot Sidorides. I've been a resident for 38 years, raised a family here, started my business here, and one of my children recently moved back to town with a young child. What drew us to New Canaan, my wife Margaret and I? Beauty, great schools, community mindedness, stewardship of our public parks, schools, and nature centers, a cohesive government. The town's reputation was enough for me to understand that there was a solid foundation for the community to prosper moving forward. From what I've heard tonight, I'm totally impressed with the public and their educated and thoughtful approach to this. Truly impressive. The 824 report should tonight be considered to be rescinded just by what they presented, if any of those items are true. The information that you heard tonight may be alarming and new to some of you, but it feels like a rerun of the same movie we dealt with 5 years ago, when the proposal for both West School and Irwin Park were on the table. The community response and result back then seemed to be clear to me, and a renewed faith was there. But here we are again. Kevin Moynihan, now the first selectman, and also our new town's expert on telecom utilities, as noted in our last meeting by himself, with a close advisor, Homeland Towers. He's been involved in private leases to build these towers, which jeopardize not only the property owner, but surrounding property values. The use of public safety and emergency services, I've been to many, many meetings, as props to construct these 150-foot cell towers when there are other means available, as we have heard from our knowledgeable community members during our last meeting, should be investigated and should be looked at. I was encouraged at our last meeting to see many of our town council members have started to peel back the onion and understand if there's a need for these towers. I was not convinced by the arguments of the team proposing this, that the implementation of these towers provide any substantial benefit to our town, only to encumber these valuable properties for many, many years to come, both in terms of their current economic value and the value flexibility under the POCD, which Vanessa eloquently described. I was also encouraged to hear from our knowledgeable public. Please use these community members when making decisions like this, as they are the ones with stake in our town's future. They are a tremendous resource. When making a decision on public lands, everyone in this room has to put themselves in an ownership position, because they're the owners of these lands. It should not be up to Homeland Towers, Kevin Moynihan, or any other lobbyist to decide this.
Thank you, Elliot. And next up is Margot. After Janae. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
Hello. First, I want to thank you all again for taking your time and listening tonight and coming in before your regular meeting. It's a lot of your time. I want to back up from all of this and say, I want to understand why we're still discussing this proposal. This group conducted a public hearing on the need for a cell tower behind West School. We all listened to the testimony. We heard Homeland Towers make their detailed presentation. We saw a 2014 Centerline report of incomplete data consisting with inconsistent coverage maps. We heard from an individual who drove the streets of New Canaan a decade ago to check how many bars of service he had on a phone, which is now outdated technology. We heard from our town's beloved EMS leaders who could not cite one example of a dangerous situation that had arisen on the west side of town due to a lack of cell service. Their one example was on the east side of town and was a decade old. In fact, I spoke to a former EMS officer of the town, and he could not think of any such examples that had occurred within his 21 years of service to the EMS of New Canaan. On the other hand, you heard testimony from numerous citizens who live on the west side of town, who run on the west side of town, who operate businesses on the west side of town, all of whom say they have adequate coverage. I'm a lawyer, and I've been a litigator at major law firms. I try cases, and I'll tell you, at this stage in a lawsuit, we ask for a directed verdict. The prima facie case has not been met. The first element would be need for the cell tower. Need has not been demonstrated. I understand that town council has asked the first selectman and Homeland Towers for additional data. I don't really know why. They knew the date. They knew when we were going to have the hearing. They had their chance to present their case. They didn't meet their burden. I think this issue should be laid to rest based on that alone. Need has not been demonstrated. If there's no clear need to build a 145-foot tower behind one of the crown jewels of our town, why are we still discussing this proposal? I understand that the selectman has also asked for funding to hire a health expert. I understand there's going to be another hearing about health data. I just don't know why we're going there. I don't know why the town's spending more money on a health expert. If there's not need, can we lay this all to rest and everyone get back their time? I think we have over 700 signatures on a petition opposing the petition. You've heard from the neighbors, you've seen signs. I think this could be a done issue. If you need this to stay viable for some reason, and I don't know why, this should be remanded to planning and zoning for a special permit. Contrary to the information that was provided to P&Z, proposed leases for cell towers are not exempt from municipalities' normal regulations. The law is clear on that. That fact was verified by the executive director of the Connecticut Siting Council. Town council has the power to remedy the mistake by rescinding the 824 report and sending this issue back to planning and zoning for a special permit process. An advantage of the special permit process would also be, so we don't know what they're proposing. I follow this very closely. I don't know what the proposal is. I understand the tower has moved at least 3 times since these discussions started. Since you all did the walk to the tower, it moved again. They've shifted the tower again since they showed the town council where it is. I also understood from the proposal that's on the town website, it's a metal tower at this point. It's not a monopine or a stealth tower. But I understand from discussion with town council members, oh no, that's still on the table too. I also know that it's precariously close in the current positioning to septic lines and water lines of the town, which is exactly what special permits are created for. We need the special permit protection if this needs to go on. I still argue it doesn't even need to proceed at this point because no need has been demonstrated. Again, I appreciate you taking the time. I am puzzled by why we are still here. I don't know what the agenda is of why someone is still pushing this forward. I understand that we could all, if there's no need, let's lay this to rest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Margot, and then next up is Megan Morales. For Margot.
Hi, my name is Mark Wonson. I am a student at West School, and I believe that we should not build a cell tower on West School property. Cell tower radiation exposures can increase breast, cervix, lung, and esophageal cancers. Cell tower radiation can also increase the amount of memory problems, depression, dizziness, and birth defects. There's sadly no evidence that shows that cell towers are completely safe for humans, animals, and the environment. And lastly, I'm not only speaking for the students at West, but also for the teachers, custodians, and staff workers. They will be at West School almost every day with the cell tower. I strongly believe that this cell tower would be a negative addition to West School. Thank you.
Hey, Margot, one sec. Margot, hey, Margot. Margot, come back up here for a sec. I want to ask you a question. I need to know what grade you're in at West School. Fourth grade. How do you like it? Thank you thank you so much for coming out and seeing us. We love seeing our residents and love seeing especially students at West School. So thank you very much. Say hi to everybody. All right, after Megan, we have Gail from 788 Ponus. Oh yeah, make sure you get close to the mic. Mark reminds me, need to hear you.
Better? Okay. Hi, my name is Megan Morales. I'm a resident of Frogtown Road. I think I can see the back of West on a clear day from my front yard. I'm really here just to give a note of appreciation. These meetings have continued on and on and on, and I'm so grateful that you're having them. As a resident, I think it's really important that there's transparency, and that was not happening with this cell tower. So I'm just really grateful to have the opportunity to speak and that you're willing to listen. I know you guys are really busy and it takes a lot of time to hear everybody because there's a lot to say on this topic. So after my note of appreciation, I've emailed all of you multiple times, so I'm sorry for the long emails. But I concur with everyone who has spoken already. This should not be rammed down residents' throats. There's a process that should be followed. And if we decide there is a need, let's look at the best technology. What is the best technology? Is it a monopine or a 145-foot tower? Maybe it's not. Maybe we can solve whatever the need is, if there actually is a need, with other technology. Have we met with other technology companies? What are they? Are they viable for the town? Do the due diligence. That's really all I want to say, is the due diligence. Like having Homeland Towers sit here and tell us we need this tower at West School, I'm just not buying it. So just keep doing what you're doing and have the meetings and hear us and talk to the residents, because they're really smart. I mean, these people have amazing things to say. So keep doing what you're doing, and thank you very much.
Thank you. And we do read every single one of those emails, believe me. Long or short, we read them. All right, Gail is up next, and then Carolyn Frick from Ponus after that. Oh, Karen Frick. Okay. Okay.
You know, we support everything that's.
Yeah, you should come up to the mic and just you can introduce yourself. We love meeting everybody.
I'm Karen Frick, and I've sat back and I've read emails on this, and I do support what everybody's saying, and I think we do need to do the due diligence. And I have a management consulting background. The last woman who spoke, definitely follow the process, investigate. Is there a need? What are the options? I mean, I've read things that said Darien does things on towers on the roads. I don't know much about it, but I think with all of us here, we owe that to the community to do it properly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Kate Kupchak is next, and then Chad Hunter after that. Oh, you got the gang. All right.
Got my sisters with me.
Where's your brother?
He's at home.
Oh.
Be a little bit of a distraction, but
Oh,
Not bringing him.
hello, my name is Kate Kupchak, and I'm a sophomore at New Canaan High School. Up here with me today are my younger sisters, Maddie and Caroline, who both attend Sachs Middle School. We are here tonight to speak on behalf of our little brother, Will, who is currently a first grader at West Elementary School. Our question to all of you is, why would anyone in our community vote in favor of something that would potentially put the health of our younger brother and all of his classmates at risk? Not to mention the health and safety of the thousands of little kids that will attend West in the future. Thank you for your time.
thank you. Chad, and then Ilias. is up next. Welcome, Chad.
Chad Hunter, 70 Bennington Place. Have been mostly a spectator and a listener up until this point. First time speaking, sent a few emails. And I wrote this, but I'm really just going to shoot from the hip after listening to what the rest of the residents have said. First of all, I'd like to reiterate everyone's, gratitude. Thank you very much for hosting the meetings and listening to us. But Steve, Chairman, at the beginning of the meeting, you said, you like to follow the process and you like, the fact that people are coming out and being heard. I guess sometimes you need to be careful what you ask for because you guys have sat through a lot of meetings at this point. But I think process is really important. I mean, it's what makes our society and our town great. Like there are rules that are supposed to be followed, right? We found out about this proposed cell tower that was supposed to be approved via a lease by the Board of Selectmen in the summer when everybody was on vacation, school wasn't in session. Thankfully, the Board of Selectmen decided to table it until people had time to find out about the proposal and were in town and able to speak about it. But there should be a process around something like this, especially something as important and long lasting as what a 145-foot tower behind an elementary school would mean to this town. So we need a utility commission. We need a functioning, impartial, open-minded commission that will listen to all kinds of ideas. We have heard experts come and tell us that cell coverage is inadequate over on the west side of town. Well, it turns out those experts work for Homeland Towers. They work for Verizon. They are paid, or I'm not even sure how to describe them, witnesses for the siting council. So we need to hear, that's fine. That's one side of the equation. But we should also be able, not we, you all should also be exposed to the other side of the arguments. There are people that don't think cell towers around developing children are safe. Are we going to hear from those people? I think as our town leaders, you should demand that we hear from the other side. The experts that have come in so far, I'm a little suspicious. I work at home. I've got between my work phone, my personal phone, my family's phones, my wife's phones, we have 10 devices. They're all Verizon. They all work on the west side of town. I take calls at my house, get in the car, drive down Ponus, go to Wahackamy, drive all the way down, come back up, get on Weed Street and go into town. And I don't lose calls. So to hear experts tell me I don't have adequate cell service in areas that I traffic in every single day makes me wonder what else they're not being honest about. So, I guess the point is, if we need to go through with this, then let's make sure that we're getting a collective body of evidence so the town can make an informed decision. But again, just another side note, the experts say this technology hasn't changed in 10 years. But the fact of the matter is there are 3 different satellite companies that are working with Verizon, with AT&T, and with T-Mobile that are putting satellites up that are basically saying T-Mobile and Starlink have basically reached an agreement late last year. Starlink has petitioned the FCC to put cellular direct technology antennas on their satellites. And they are claiming that they're going to have full coverage for the entire United States with satellite service by the end of 2024. The tower that these guys are talking about building won't even be up by then. And it could be obsolete before it's even online. So I'm rambling a little bit, but I think that at a minimum, the town needs to get an updated coverage map to figure out where our gaps are. The ones that we're relying on are 10 years old. I think there are 4 new towers that have come online, 3 or 4 that have come online in that time. Plus there are microsites that have come on. I know for a fact that my cellular service in town is way better than it was when I moved here 10 years ago. So there may not be new technology or whatever, but my service is better. And I don't need an expert telling me it isn't, because I know for a fact that it is. So I think we need an updated, if it needs to proceed, we should figure out where our real gaps are at this point. We should, I'm not exactly sure jurisdictions or whatever, but I think the town council should ask that the first selectman recuse himself from any votes related to cell towers on private or on public land, and should also remove himself from assigning or voting on approving any utility commission members. He seems compromised and he seems very biased in terms of his solution So I think the town leadership owes it to the residents to make sure that we're getting an unbiased, unfiltered recommendation about what our issues are, what our solutions are, and how we might best implement them. But I'm pretty convinced that if you ask a tower builder how to improve cell coverage, they're going to say, build a tower. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. And after Alias, it's John Clark. And I apologize if I've mispronounced your name.
Did it perfectly. Hi, everybody. My name is Ilyas Islamov. Live on Bennington Place, 106. And we have 3 kids that currently attend West Elementary. Thank you for your time again. And thank you for all my neighbors and residents that have spoken very eloquently. Again, I don't think I'll introduce anything new here, but just wanted to kind of voice my understanding of the issue, how myself and all my neighbors feel about it. First and foremost, the issue of need. Have not heard from anybody, resident, parent, neighbor, of a need for a cell tower. Reception is widely considered adequate. Maybe first responders have expressed a preference for an improved level of communication. Emergency communications have been aided by radio antenna on top of the school, as well as the fact that they're not beholden only on Verizon. They can use all other carriers cell reception. So the Verizon argument by itself is, I think, kind of weak on that front. The only need for a cell tower seems to be on the side of Verizon that claims a deceptively weak coverage in New Canaan for the purpose of securing a cell tower approval, while claiming an omnipresent 5G coverage when advertising to its New Canaan customers, such as myself. I do have Verizon. It's not 5G everywhere as they promised when I was getting my phone. At the same time, it's nowhere near as bad as I'm hearing from them presenting to us. The only other entity that sees need for a cell tower seems to be the company that would profit from building it. Homeland Towers, a company that's embroiled in countless lawsuits with various communities around us, Connecticut, New York. There's so many of them if you just search online. You see cell towers are the only thing that they built. And as Chad mentioned, it's all their experts and advocates will invariably arrive at the recommendation that more cell towers are needed. As the saying goes, if all you have is a hammer, everything will look to you as a nail. There's simply no need for cell tower at or around West School, given the current state of coverage and alternative technology available. No need for such. The need for such tower has been manufactured by partial experts and outdated studies. The New Canaan community has strongly rejected this need on a number of occasions, given numerous concerns with its impact, both health and other. I believe the town should side with the residents and the taxpayers on this, as opposed to transparently self-serving special interests. And again, I know there's going to be another meeting on the health impact, and I welcome that. But again, I've heard many times, hey, cell tower is the same as a cell phone, or there's no proven harm. But again, like there's probably generations passed between when cigarettes and tobacco were adopted widely and the government actually realized that there's a harmful effect. We just don't know what the risks are. And I definitely don't want us to basically be gambling with the health of our children. And lastly, on the topic of first responders, again, we shouldn't allow them to be pressured into supporting a cell tower just because it's that or nothing for them as far as improvements. There are many alternatives for further improving connectivity. For example, a macro cell tower on top of West School will help reception in and around the school. On top of that, I believe Chad mentioned Starlink satellite. There are kits that are already available that could be put on top of fire trucks, for example, and that would eliminate dead zones for connectivity, not only on the west side, but anywhere around town. And we all know that there's much worse spots around town for cell reception. So with all that, thank you again for the opportunity. On one side of me, I echo some of the sentiment as why we're still talking about this. On the other side, I'm grateful that we have the forum to talk about it, and that, confident that we'll follow the right process from here on out. Again, thank you, and look forward to kind of arriving at the conclusion that serves the community.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. John Clark. And after John, it's Laurel Howe. Welcome back, John.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having me back. I want to join Mr. Hunter and Ms. Morales in expressing my gratitude to the council for hearing us this evening and for planning the series of hearings that the council has planned about this project. You know, I'm a lawyer, and as a lawyer, I focus on process, burden, and jurisdiction. So I want to talk about process, burden, and jurisdiction tonight. The process has raised some serious questions. As one of the speakers just mentioned, this came to the public's attention thanks to the New Canaanite reporting on Board of Selectmen meeting in the doldrums of the summer, when many of us weren't even around, and where it seemed the rush was on to obtain a quick approval in the quote dead of night end quote for New Canaan in early August. Now that was the start of it, and 2 out of the 3 members of the Board of Selectmen didn't agree with that approach. Next step was the Planning and Zoning meeting, and the meeting was announced on short notice. I think it was 1 business day's notice, a Friday before a Monday, and at that Planning and Zoning hearing, the P&Z was told, well, you have 35 days from Friday to make your decision. Well, 35 days is not a lot of time, but it's a lot more than 1 business day. And yet the Planning and Zoning Commission went along with a dubious legal opinion, which at the time I commented publicly was unlikely to be correct, and which Mr. Powell has now proven to have been incorrect, and decided to forego the process that should have been used for a special permit, and to give the imprimatur based on whether this proposal complied with the plan of conservation and development, which I think it's been shown tonight it does not. So let me switch now for a minute from process to burden. I've sat in a lot of these hearing rooms during this process and under the previous first selectman talking about this tower. And it's always been put on the parties opposing the plan to demonstrate that it's going to cause problems, to show that it will be a health problem for children to build a 145-foot cell phone tower behind an elementary school. That has it all wrong. This is a town property. The town acts for the best interest of its citizens. The burden is on the proponents to show that this is a correct decision for the town to make. The proponents, not the opponents. It's the proponents' burden to show that the applicable laws have been followed. They have not been. To show that the proposed tower is needed. That showing is woefully inadequate so far. To show that the proposed tower is consistent with the character of this town and its plan of conservation and development. I can't imagine a 600-foot gravel road through an undeveloped patch of woods is consistent with what most New Canaanites believe is our plan of conservation, not to mention a 145-foot monopine cell phone tower. And to show that the tower poses no threat to the health and well-being of the citizens of this town, including its youngest and most vulnerable ones. This council is the body that should be looking at who has the burden and whether that burden has been met on all of these points. And I know from the record so far that none have been satisfied. But now let me get back to the question of jurisdiction that Mr. Butterworth raised at the beginning of this hearing. I don't purport to know municipal law or the ordinances of the town of New Canaan or the structure of the government of this town, other than what I read in the New Canaanite, and understanding that there's a board of selectmen that has certain responsibilities and a town council that has others, and that there are volunteer commissions that we are all grateful for their service. I don't understand how all that interacts, but what I do know is this council has the ability to say no and to start this process again. So you do have jurisdiction. Whether you can overturn a P&Z decision is beside the point. You can say no, go back to square one, go back to go, do not pass go, do not collect your $200. Let's start this process again. And that is what you should do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. All right, Laurel Howe, and then Paul Ritano. Welcome,
Hi.
Laurel. How are you?
Thank you. I want to say thank you to everybody in this room for being here, for hearing us, and particularly to my community members who have done extensive research and investigative reporting to uncover what's going on. This is my third time here for the same issue in 12 years since we moved here. Very shortly after I moved here 12 years ago, there was the proposed West School cell tower, and it was pretty quickly shut down, I felt like, although the process may have started before I had moved here, because there was a room full of angry residents, and AT&T walked away pretty quickly and said, we don't want any part of this. That was the first time. The second time was 5 years ago. And I sat here in this room with my children. Actually, it might not have been this room. I think this is new. With my children, because my middle school son had started a petition at Saks because he didn't want his little brother to get brain cancer. His teacher at Saks, this is the wonderful residents and teachers we have in this community, she called me up and said, I really want to be there. She came and she sat, we were here until 10 o'clock at night. I think the meeting started at 6. And she sat with us through that. And my boys went up and stood at that podium and spoke to everyone. One of them was in the front page of the newspaper. I just don't understand why we're here again, why we're doing this. The community has spoken time and time again. I no longer have any children at West School, but as a duty to my own children and their feelings and any future child that should enter through that door there, why would anyone who lives in this community, whether you're on the town council, selectmen, planning and zoning, or just a plain old resident, it's unconscionable how you could expose a developing child's thin skull to that continued radiation day after day after day for years. There is not one single study out there that proves that it does not harm. There can't possibly be. It hasn't been around long enough. I just don't understand why we continue to fight the same issue when none of those things have changed. So please ask yourselves that if it was your child, how would you feel?
Thank you, Laurel. Thank you. All right, Paul is our final speaker, unless there's anybody else that it's 7:02, so coming to the end. How are you, Paul?
Good. I'll just follow up on that a little bit. I know we are having a separate meeting on the health effects, which I really appreciate, of non-ionizing radiation. But as it's one of my main concerns regarding the proposed tower, I just wanted to raise it here and give you guys something to think about. I think when people say brain cancer or they say, any of these big, worst case scenario consequences of a cell tower, a lot of people roll their eyes or they want to roll their eyes. And I'm here today to ask you not to. If every time somebody brings up a health effect concern and we've heard this before, it's been disproven, I want to talk about why this is different. Having a cell tower or a cell site at our high school or even our middle school is a fundamentally different issue than having one at one of our elementary schools. It's essential that as the town makes its final decisions regarding the cell tower at West Elementary, we understand that really simple fact. All of the knowns and, to be fair, unknowns surrounding non-ionizing radiation exposure become much more significant when you start proposing cell towers above elementary schools. The conversation switches from focusing on what the WHO classifies as a possible carcinogen to the numerous studies that mark non-ionizing radiation's adverse effects on brain development. The skull thickness, as was mentioned just before me, of an average adult is 2 millimeters. The skull thickness of my 7-year-old daughter is approximately 0.6 millimeters. Radiation penetration is greater in children than adults, and I'm not sure if you'll find a doctor to argue against that. It's a fact. And because a child's head is smaller, its energy absorbing hotspots are more pronounced. Many parents move to the west side of New Canaan because of West School, and more specifically because of West School's excellent programs for children with special needs. So why build a cell tower there when multiple peer-reviewed studies and multiple governments across the world and multiple towns in Fairfield County all advise or in some cases regulate against the close proximity of cell towers to developing children? Why not just build it? Verizon says it's safe. Homeland Towers says it's safe. Kevin says it's safe. The state of Connecticut will just rubber stamp it as quickly as we make the request for it. They'll say yes. The Siting Council will say yes to this. So let's just build it. Because the parents at West School are asking, really pleading with you not to. The City Council and 2 of our first selectmen are all that stands between a really bad idea and our children's skulls. So why not err on the side of caution when it's a child's developing brain we're working to protect? To quote a peer-reviewed study that I'm leaving for you guys if you want to read it, for children, stricter standards are required until scientific knowledge is established, specifically in facilities such as schools and preschools. It's just a different ballgame here. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, last 2 in the room, we have Elizabeth first. And then right after that, we have Sherry. We'll add you to our main list here. How are you, Elizabeth?
Thanks. How are you guys?
Good, good. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks. Hi, good evening. So I'm Elizabeth Langdale. I'm a resident of New Canaan. I have a young child at West School currently, and I'll have an even younger one starting at West School in the coming years. I am of the mind personally that there is no level of acceptable risk that should be tolerated when it comes to our children and their health and safety. That said, I think myself and the town are really appreciative of the Planning and Zoning Commission and Town Council's efforts to try to get more information about the potential health risks there through hiring an independent consultant who will advise the towns on the risk and safety issues that may be present. That said, I'm here to talk about the riveting topic of conflicts of interest, but I do think it's really important to focus on that here. Mr. Moynihan has announced that he has selected for this important role Gradient Consulting, and specifically Dr. Peter Valberg, who's a principal at Gradient. Dr. Valberg has a lot of impressive credentials. He's certainly published quite frequently on this and other subjects, but I think that raises an issue for what it is that we're trying to do here. Specifically, we think that Dr. Valberg lacks the independence and has significant conflicts of interest when it comes to being able to advise this town on the health risks associated with this tower. He's frankly more of an expert witness for the telecommunications industry. He has testified numerous times on behalf of power companies, telecommunications companies, tobacco companies, although that's not directly relevant here. And he's not frankly an independent consultant so much as a paid expert on behalf of telecommunications companies, such as the ones proposing the cell tower here. I think in your binders and on the slides, you have some of the examples of the times that Dr. Valberg has testified. There are certainly many more where this comes from. He's been on the peer review board of Wireless Technology Research LLC, Cellular Communications Industry Association through Harvard. The Cellular Telecommunications Industry Association members include Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, and others. In addition, Dr. Valberg's resume shows that he and Gradient Consulting have the Connecticut Siting Council as a client. He himself was involved in establishing Siting Council EMS policy. I've done a little digging myself on some databases that I have access to, and I can tell you that Dr. Valberg's testimony on behalf of power companies, including telecommunications companies, is vast and it's one-sided. I think that the conclusions you're going to receive from this report are foregone conclusions. I think we can probably all say right here today what it is that his investigation will find. I think the town needs to endeavor to find a truly independent consultant who can speak to these very important issues. I also found, and I think that this is important to read into the record, included in Dr. Valberg's work on behalf of the tobacco industry, where he's been hired numerous times by Philip Morris to be an expert in support of some of their litigation against class action defendants. One court in particular found, sorry, I have to enlarge this a little bit. Get it wrong. One court found, and I'm quoting from the court, that Dr. Valberg's analysis on behalf of Philip Morris was, quote, shown to be inconsistent and contrary to the consensus of the scientific community. And this is testimony in a court. I mean, this really matters. And he was found by the judge to be that his findings were contrary to the consensus of the scientific community, and that the testimony of a competing expert offered in that case was, quote, far more persuasive and credible than the testimony of Dr. Valberg. I don't think that this is the right person for this very important job. I think we can do better. I think if we're going to put money toward this, we should do so in a way that is not going to simply uncover conclusions that we already know have been found. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, Sherry. Hi, Sherry. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Welcome.
I'll be quick, I promise.
Thanks.
So I moved to New Canaan 12 years ago. I live on Winfield Lane. My backyard backs directly up to West School. It's beautiful there. We moved here because it's the end of a cul-de-sac. It was a beautiful community. We really enjoy the nature. We enjoy the privacy. I remember when we first moved here, we'd be sitting in the backyard listening to the kids play in the playground from our backyard. It was just so nice. Still is. Don't get me wrong. But the one thing I wanted to talk about, I more just wanted to be on record of my concerns. I do echo what everybody else has said. The only additions that I would bring up would be a concern about the wetlands. I have a lot of wetlands behind my house. I have a lot of impact from changes that have been done on Winfield Lane. The rainwaters might change. If Janet was here, she'd share my concern. Every time something happens, we're always affected. So now if we're talking about a road and it's going to come through, we're going to go, and for some reason it was okay for this project, which goes through the wetlands, to be okay, where Janet and I have both in separate instances looked at, what could we do? Could we enlarge our backyard? Could we do this? Could we do that? And everybody kept saying, no, it's wetlands. We don't touch wetlands. So hearing the concerns, and then all of a sudden it was suddenly okay in a matter of minutes for this project to take effect, really, really concerned me. The other thing that I would bring up, and I'll quote Janae, if the technology is needed, if the project is needed, it really is outdated technology. So I work in a CTO office in a really large firm in the company, in the city. And I can tell you that the only constant is change, like change all the time. So I was thinking to myself as we're sitting here, how fast does technology really evolve? Because I know I can guarantee I've been programming, I've been in this CTO department for ages. It's so fast. So I looked online and I found how fast is it growing? And it stated on the web, of course, the web's always right. Technology is growing exponentially. Computer speed and power have generally been doubling every 1.5 to 2 years since the 60s and the 70s. And it's only gone up since then. Now, of course, this is computers, but if we're talking about technology with cell phones, we're already on the iPhone 11. I think 12 is coming out this year. 14. See, look at me. I can't even keep up. That's a good point. There has to be a better option. If it's needed, we have to look at this. And I loved the stat that we're not even going to be done building this in 2024, yet the, new technology is coming out that's going to allow us to not need these towers. It's already there. We're already at, Gen 5. So again, I'm not bringing up anything new. I really just wanted to come up here and make sure that, other people's like the stories and the effects that it has on our residents really resides with you as well. I do want to say really quickly a thank you to all the residents who've thoroughly done their research and stand up for us who don't have this type of background. Thank you, Town Council, for your time and for listening us. And please continue to include us because we're very passionate about not getting a tower. We just don't understand.
Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. 7:15, final speaker. Oh, okay. Welcome, Mai. How are you?
Hello. Hi, my name is Mai Din. I'm a West School parent and I live on Bennington Place. Thank you for having this hearing. As a newer resident, I appreciate that you listen to our concerns. And this fight to stop the cell tower at West School has taken a lot of time and energy, but there's been one positive. I've gotten to know my neighbors as we've tried to figure out a better solution. And one neighbor who grew up in New Canaan said, quote, "I'm simply appalled with what's happening to our town at the hands of the first selectman, not just a cell tower. A travesty. Grounds to move away, truly." I've heard West School parents say they will take their kids out of the school if this tower is built. And I have neighbors who are cancer survivors who feel they'd have to move because they don't want to expose themselves and their families to RF radiation. We all want reliable cell coverage for our first responders and our teachers at West. But we want you to find a solution, the smartest solution, with up-to-date technology that does not require multiple macro towers all over town that would take years to implement. Bennington Place and Wing Road, we felt a loss of community this year when our bus route was changed. We no longer have that daily walk and check-in as we wait at the stop. It was a simple change, a bus reassignment, but it truly changed the quality of our lives. We lost that time to connect and to build a community. So I don't want to know what would happen to the West School community if we built a permanent macro cell tower at the school. I think it would be a travesty. So please reject the P&Z findings, do due process, and don't continue with this tower. Thank you.
Thank you, Mai. Thank you.
If there's anybody online that wants to speak, we'd ask that you raise your virtual yellow hand and we can call on you. Thank you.
No. We're good. No, we're good. We're good. So, so you have how many raised hands out there, Tiger? None. Okay. All right. So it's 7:18. So we're going to call that the public hearing, and we want to thank everybody for coming out. And
There's a raised hand.
Oh, is there a raised hand there? You got one? I want to make sure we got everybody, so, especially if they've hung, especially if they're hang on for this whole meeting. Oh, Christina. Christina, you want to say something? Or you just,
Yeah, don't be so disappointed. I just wanted to make sure that whatever handouts were given by the public, that they are set aside for those that are not present at the meeting.
There aren't any.
The only handout that was given was Mr. Powell.
yeah, we have a binder. We'll save you one. And for those,
is-
go ahead, Christina.
Are the other participants handing over whatever presentations they made?
No, but what I'm going to say is if you did present tonight and you want to get it to us, we have a town email and I would just send it to the, it's a TC distribution email that we all get. So if you could please just scan it and send it to us, that'd be helpful. Well, obviously, a lot of us made notes about what everybody said too, and it's recorded, but it's nice to see it in writing if you have it. So
Thank you.
Reminder, Christina. All right. So with that, just want to thank everybody for coming out. And obviously, you know, we're going to be loud about the next meeting when that happens, so everybody can hear about it. So thank you again for coming out. We have some sexy things on our agenda if you want to stay, though. We've got property stuff to go, and have a great night, everybody. Thank you.